Hey everyone, it's Heath West here at our second Treasure Coast Songwriters Festival with Angie K. How are ya?
I'm doing great, Heath. I'm coronaed up. I just played a couple shows. I'm ready to go.
You're a veteran. You've been here for number 1 and number 2.
I'm not a veteran, but I am here again.
Yes,
just to be clear.
A veteran of the Songwriters Festival, our
Yes.
Songwriters Festival. I have to ask, I was watching you perform, and you didn't have any shoes on. You kicked them off when you perform. What is that about? I saw you putting them back on when you were done. I was like, oh, she's no shoes.
You know, I think I kind of came up in Florida. I lived in Georgia, and I played a lot of beach bars, and I just loved being barefoot. And I started wearing boots when I was trying to be professional, and then I toured a while with Jake Owen, and he always is barefoot. And I was like, well, that guy can get away with it. And it's just great. It keeps you grounded. You get to hear the bass, you know?
I think his, Instagram, no, it's not his Instagram, but one of his handles used to be Barefoot Jake.
It did,
on social
yeah,
media.
yeah. That's way back. That's way back.
Yeah, he's a local boy. He's from this
Vero.
side of Vero. That's where I live
Not
too.
far.
He's a good guy. I have to ask about your where you're from originally. Originally, right? It's El Salvador, San
That's
Salvador.
right. Yeah, El Salvador, San Salvador is the city in El Salvador. So a lot of water people near where I'm from. The beach that I grew up at is called La Libertad, and a lot of fishing, a lot of surfing. So kind of similar to Florida, honestly.
So how long were you there?
Till I was 12, and I go
Okay.
back every year. Yeah.
So, but you were talking on stage about growing up with country music during that time there.
Yeah, so-
because fill me in, because that's a whole other world to me. I don't travel, so I don't know. How does that music work its way to where you were?
You know, it's interesting. If you go outside the United States, most people, when they hear country music, they think about the old school classics. And my mom actually is American. She's from New Mexico. She's Spanish descendant, but from New Mexico. And she grew up listening to Dolly Parton. So when we lived in El Salvador, I remember my mom putting on those records and playing Coat of Many Colors and
Sure.
telling me the story of my grandparents. And I played one of the songs about my great-grandparents that I wrote called Laredo, and that was modeled after what Dolly did, which is tell stories that really happened and that meant something. And that's where I fell at the back of the record. It said "Made in Nashville," and I knew I was going to live there one day.
You looked at those records too? I always the old RCA records would always say something about recorded in Nashville, home of the Country Music Hall of Fame.
That's right.
You remember those?
Oh, I do.
I always used to pour.
I have 'em.
If you were like this or not, but I would pour over the songwriters and the producers
yeah.
and all that who played the drums. That I hated when they didn't have that information on the back of an album. But as a songwriter, you must have at an early age maybe had an interest in that.
Oh, you geek out at it. And the cool thing is a lot of Apple Music, Spotify, they've caught up with that.
Finally.
And now you can see all the writers. And it's really cool living in Nashville for so long because Brinley Addington, getting to see Chasing After You, you click who wrote it and you see his name. And it feels really good to see your friends win like that and know that their name is known. It makes you feel good.
Well, you got a lot of friends that are songwriters. Do you ever get nervous around anyone in Nashville or music, someone who you just kind of geeked out over? Oh my God, that's...
Well, okay, I will say I've got
You
to
don't
meet a
say
lot
me,
of people.
of course.
Honestly, Heath, it took me a second. I was
Sure, of
walking into
course.
this interview, but
They always do.
I will say I met a lot of pretty big people, but Blake Shelton made me a little nervous, and it's so interesting that I was the least nervous guy that I should have ever wanted. He is the most down-to-earth human being I've ever met. I was on The Voice for a few episodes, and he was obviously heard my boots, and he turned around right away, as one should. And I remember walking up to him and being kind of nervous. And he just cracked a joke just right off the cuff. And he makes you feel like you're talking to your long-lost uncle, immediately. And he smells a little like whiskey, just feels like home. And honestly, I feel like he is the epitome of what country music should be. And everyone I've met after that, from Thomas Rhett to Jake Owen to Tanya Tucker. I mean, everybody has that feeling about them where it's about the community, helping the next one up. And it makes me feel like the only reason I want to get to the next level is to do that for somebody else. And
Awesome.
That's country music. That's what it is. You don't see that in pop music. You just don't.
You don't,
No.
and we also see that on the radio side. The country artists are such more accessible and friendly for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because they're just normal people like the rest of us.
Very true.
That's Angie K. here at our second Treasure Coast Songwriters Festival. Thanks for coming again.
Good to be here.